Good evening. It's Friday, April 17th. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabolsi, and we are broadcasting remotely tonight. The pain being felt from COVID-19 just keeps on coming, from new cases and loss of life to the loss of jobs and major events, as word comes that Comic-Con is being canceled. The economic impact will be devastating, and it comes as Governor Newsom proclaims we are now in a pandemic-induced recession. Here in San Diego County, the death toll is now 70, with more than 2,100 cases. KPBS reporter John Carroll has the latest.
To the surprise of perhaps no one, Comic-Con made it official today. There will be no Comic-Con this year. The cancellation represents a major blow to the city and regional economy, nearly $150 million, according to the convention center. The regional impact from other conventions canceled for March, April, May, and June is about $345 million. From the county today, Board of Supervisors Chairman Greg Cox announced a group of business and labor leaders will begin meeting on Mondays to discuss how the county will reopen. He says the when will be left to medical experts.
A few weeks back, I was giving a state of the state, talking about the fact that we had just entered into our 119th month of consecutive job growth.
That, as they say, was then. Now we are in what the governor calls a pandemic-induced recession, with the reported unemployment rate at 5.3%, a figure Newsom says is surely much higher. 3.1 million Californians have applied for unemployment benefits just since March 12th. Against the backdrop of the highest number of deaths recorded yet over the last 24 hours in California, Newsom moved on to talk about the state's short, medium, and long-term recovery, with a big caveat.
I only am guided by health and science, real data, and a granular level, bottom up, not top down.
The governor went on to announce the creation of an economic advisory council made up of 80 people he called the best and the brightest in their field, almost all of them Californians. It includes all 4 living former governors of California, Jerry Brown, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Gray Davis, and Pete Wilson. Republican and Democratic leaders in the legislature are also on board. The council will be led by former Democratic presidential candidate Tom Steyer. Both Steyer and Newsom made it clear the economy California will have on the other side of this crisis will be more equitable, with an emphasis on shrinking California's enormous income gap.
If we're going to learn anything from the past, it's not to repeat the mistakes of the past and have a sustainable mindset, not just a situational mindset, again, in terms of how we recover. It is in the how we recover that I think ultimately we will be judged and judge ourselves.
Governor Newsom says next Wednesday he'll start laying out recovery steps based on the 6 indicators he announced earlier this week. He says he'll do that every Wednesday for the foreseeable future. He also says the state is working hard on ramping up testing, the goal to get to 25,000 tests a day sometime within the next few weeks. John Carroll, KPBS News.
And as we mentioned earlier, Comic-Con won't go on this year. Although it was expected to be canceled, it's still a big disappointment for thousands of fans. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has the details.
Comic-Con attracts more than 135,000 attendees every summer and uses not only every inch of convention center space, but also many meeting rooms in nearby hotels. So it was not easy for Comic-Con International to decide for the first time in its 50 years to cancel its summer pop culture convention because of restrictions on public gatherings in response to COVID-19.
It was a very long, methodical and gut-wrenching process, to be honest with you. Our hope was that things would calm down enough that we would be able to have the event in July, the possibility of maybe even a pared-down event, but it became apparent that that just was not possible. So we had to announce that there would be no Comic-Con in 2020.
Spokesperson David Glanzer says Comic-Con International also had to cancel its smaller WonderCon convention that was scheduled for earlier this month in Anaheim. And that makes the financial impact even greater for the organization.
It will not be easily weathered. You know, we're a nonprofit organization, and I think that while we have a very big footprint, a global footprint, we're kind of a lean machine to a certain degree. A lot of the funds that we have are in preparation for something like this. Should something like this happen, we'll be able to move forward to plan for next year. But what that means is we may not be able to replenish our funds. And yes, it's going to be very, very difficult. We all know that, but we're all committed to making sure that we have Comic-Con 2021.
But canceling Comic-Con will have a huge financial impact on not just the organization and the city.
One of the most gut-wrenching things about this are the stakeholders in our show. There are, individuals who make their livelihood or a good portion of their livelihood at Comic-Con, and it's so horrible to not have a show this year.
Comic-Con is looking into options for a virtual or online version of the convention. If you purchase badges for this year, you will have an option to request a refund or transfer the badges to next year. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And as we head into the weekend, governors across the country are grappling with two key questions: how to reopen states and when. Nadia Romero has the latest on the coronavirus uncertainty.
I believe it will boom.
That's President Trump's goal for the economy, unveiling federal guidelines for when states should begin a phased reopening of certain businesses.
We are not opening all at once, but one careful step at a time.
But the final call comes down to governors. Some warn against reopening the economy without rapid testing.
You have to develop a testing capacity that does not now exist.
Leaders at Amazon say they're assembling their own labs to start testing its frontline employees.
The only way for us to get the economies of the world going again is to have a system where testing is readily available so that those who are diagnosed positive can be taken care of and isolated from the population of workers.
Meanwhile, Congress remains at a stalemate. White House officials want more money for the small business loan program.
I just don't know why they can't do a quick voice vote and replenish it and give $250 billion.
But congressional Democrats are pushing for more funding for health care workers, amongst other areas.
We've also proposed hand in hand with that $100 billion for health care for our hospitals, which are the front line here, and $30 billion for a testing program.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says negotiations will continue through the weekend. In Washington, Nadia Romero, KPBS News.
And sadly, it's becoming a common sight locally and around the U.S. for that matter. Another emergency food bank distribution site popped up this morning, this time at the Grossmont Center in La Mesa. Another 1,000 vehicles lined up. Each family received a 40-pound box of food with additional paper products. The need continues to be great across the county. Before the crisis, the San Diego Food Bank was feeding 350,000 people. Now they're feeding 600,000 or more.
I never expected so many people. Now you realize how the situation is here in San Diego with all these people that show up.
We have a lot of people that have never asked for help before. They're a little reluctant to do so, and we just want them to know, no, there's enough food for everybody. We have a distribution system of 200 sites plus 500 nonprofit partners.
Now, if you're someone who is getting by at this time and would like to give, the food bank and others would greatly appreciate financial help, even volunteers. Layoffs in the San Diego region have exceeded 20 times the average yearly number in the last month and a half. That's according to data released by the San Diego Workforce Partnership. The report found that in March and April, nearly 50,000 people lost their jobs. Restaurant and bar employees, as well as those in hospitality, have been the hardest hit by far. Those industries account for around 30,000 lost jobs. It appears many students are falling behind amid the pandemic, even with distance learning. So school districts are talking about extending the school year into the summer. KPBS education reporter Joe Hong explains the pros and cons of that decision.
Continuing distance learning through the summer could be costly and could widen achievement gaps for vulnerable student groups. But San Diego Unified School District board member Richard Barrera says it's far better than doing nothing.
There's no question that distance learning will mean that those gaps widen because certain students, the students who are most likely to fall behind during distance learning are the most vulnerable students. However, what is also a certainty is doing nothing will widen those gaps, more than doing something.
Ideally, Barrera said students could go back into the classroom for summer instruction, but he acknowledges that's unlikely given where we are with the pandemic. So San Diego Unified's top priority right now is securing state and federal funding to continue distance learning through July.
The ideal situation for us would be a simple extension of the school year by 5 or 6 weeks for all of our students, and that would be about $50 million to do that, or about $500 per student, which we think would be consistent around the state.
But San Diego Unified's teachers aren't yet sold on the idea. President of the Teachers Union, Keisha Borden, said educators are exhausted, and many of them already have summer jobs lined up. In a statement, Borden said, "There's a lot of hurdles that we'd have to overcome to even have a conversation about what's feasible. We're always open to doing what's best for students and educators, and we will work with the district to determine what's realistic to minimize the impact of the pandemic on students." At Chula Vista Elementary School District, the summer break is only 6 weeks long, and the school year starts in late July. So extending the school year would give teachers almost no time to recover and prepare for the school year.
And we're also concerned about, everybody being able to make it out the other side whole.
Susan Scala is the president of the Teachers Union at the district.
I hope that people can just sit back and kind of relax and regroup, because this is really hard work, and most of the people that I've talked to have said that they're working longer and harder than they did when they were in the classroom.
A spokesman from the Chula Vista Elementary School District said the district is waiting for the governor's revised budget in May before considering any summer learning opportunities. Joe Hong, KPBS News.
The California State University system is suspending the use of ACT and SAT test scores in determining admission eligibility. The change only applies to freshman applicants for the fall of 2021, winter 2022, and then spring of 2022. The University of California system announced a similar move earlier this month. A hunger strike is now underway after 27 detainees at the Otay Mesa Detention Center tested positive for COVID-19. As KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler explains, the protest is over the lack of safety precautions being taken by guards at the facility.
A detainee inside the Otay Mesa Center says at least 26 people in his pod refused meals on Friday. They're protesting a lack of healthcare precautions that has led to the largest outbreak in immigration detention in the country. The detainees were given masks a week ago, but have not been given replacement ones well after the CDC says they would have lost their effectiveness. Hunger striker Edgar Gransky has been detained at Otay Mesa for 8 months. He's facing possible deportation back to Russia. On a phone call today, he told KPBS that it's impossible to maintain social distance while in detention, and that sick detainees in his pod are being told to gargle salt water, aren't being tested for COVID-19, and are sent back to be with the rest of the pod. He also said guards have ignored CDC safety guidelines and have walked around the facility without masks or gloves.
One of the COs that are here can hear us not wearing a mask or gloves. And they walk around, touch the rails, touch the doors, touch their keys, and everywhere. The CDC rules are not being followed here.
The detainees say they'll be on hunger strike until they're tested and treated for COVID-19 if they're positive. They also want better safety equipment and for all guards to follow CDC guidance. Gransky uses some strong language in talking about the demands.
It's common sense. Come on, you guys. We're all adults here. We're dealing with an epidemic we've never had to deal with in our lifetime. But do things and take the precautions necessary, not half-ass it.
Core Civic, which runs the facility, directed questions about the hunger strike to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE denied there's an ongoing hunger strike at Otay Mesa. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
And we are following all of the latest coronavirus developments for you at kpbs.org. Click on the Tracking COVID-19 link on our homepage and you'll be taken to a page with all of our recent reports. You can find that right now at kpbs.org. Today marks 50 years since the splashdown by one of NASA's most incredible missions, Apollo 13. The spacecraft suffered an explosion on its journey to the moon that triggered the most daring and successful rescue in NASA's history. The San Diego Air and Space Museum held a virtual celebration. The 2 surviving Apollo 13 astronauts and 4 flight directors took part from their homes. Astronaut Jim Lovell says the timing of the explosion was actually lucky.
If the explosion had occurred once we first committed ourselves to a flight to the moon at a high rate of speed, we probably would not have enough consumables in the lunar module to get all the way around the moon and back again for a safe landing. If the explosion occurred after we had burned into lunar orbit, or heaven forbid on the lunar surface, well, we wouldn't be doing this today. So the timing of the explosion was very, very important. And actually, maybe it was a little gift we got that allowed that to happen and to allow the Apollo 13 flight to be successful enough to talk about.
You can watch the full event on the San Diego Air and Space Museum's Facebook page. And on this historic day for NASA, astronaut and UC San Diego alumna Jessica Meir returned to Earth. Meir, astronaut Andrew Morgan, and a Russian cosmonaut touched down in Kazakhstan. Meir spent 205 days in space and took part in the first 3 all-women spacewalks. The clouds moved in again today, and it looks like we could see some spotty showers as well. Jeff Cornish has your weekend forecast.
We have just a little bit of moisture in the neighborhood. Hope you're doing well on this Friday. We're glad that you're tuned in to us here on KPBS. Spotty showers and drizzle will be with us tonight, even into parts of Saturday morning. Nothing terribly heavy. We're looking at 1/10 of an inch of rain or less. Some of us just a trace, barely measurable in some spots. A little drier on Sunday, and then Monday we'll have another opportunity for some light showers or patchy drizzle. And we'll take what we can get this time of the year as the dry season is coming and the dry out is inevitable. Tonight, spotty sprinkles and showers, a little bit of moisture clinging near the coast, Oceanside, San Diego, Chula Vista, 57 into Chula Vista and San Diego. El Cajon, about 56 degrees, Borrego Springs, 57. And we don't expect to see much in the interior. Saturday, still a little moisture around, nothing heavy though. Spotty, patchy drizzle here and there. It looks limited, but just enough to include in the forecast. Spotty sprinkles for some, patchy drizzle possible for a period of time into San Diego. Mount Laguna only 49. Other low-lying areas, the deserts of the interior, deep into the mid to upper 70s. So there's a little disturbance that's moving east. We get a little ridgy with that more clockwise type curvature to the wind for a day. And then on Monday, it goes to more of a counterclockwise curvature aloft. And that's going to encourage a little more lift in the atmosphere and a better chance for a few more sprinkles, patchy drizzle, and a shower or 2. Doesn't look like it's going to be much, though. Here we have a little hint of moisture in the early week forecast. So that may be kind of playing out similar to what we're dealing with right now with some patchy drizzle here and there. The coast forecast, a little misty on Saturday. Nothing heavy, though. Much of the day just cloudy. Clouds will break into Sunday. More clouds Monday. Again, chance for a sprinkle or 2 Monday into Tuesday morning. Inland areas, similar story here. A little mist on Saturday. Another opportunity for a few Monday evening or Tuesday morning sprinkles or showers. The mountains generally misty at times, but most of the forecast looks just cool and generally dry, a little brighter into the middle of the week. And the deserts here, we're not going to find much in the way of precipitation. Warming up, 86 Tuesday, 95 Wednesday. The heat will soon be on. I'm meteorologist Jeff Cornish for KPBS News.
As coronavirus rips through senior care facilities nationwide, killing thousands, staffing shortages are creating their own kind of risk. KPBS investigative reporter Amitha Sharma spoke to an employee at one San Diego facility who says he was recruited to work as a caregiver for 2 senior residents with COVID-19, despite almost no training.
At $7,000 a month for singles and $14,000 for couples, retirement community Oakmont of Pacific Beach is one of the more upscale senior residences in San Diego.
It's like living on a cruise ship that doesn't go anywhere. And when you're a senior citizen, that's kind of a good place to be.
But not lately, says Richard Pijak. He works as a driver at Oakmont. He says earlier this month, his supervisor asked if he could fill in as a caregiver for 2 women. a 98-year-old and 102-year-old. They both had COVID-19 and were in quarantine. He says his desire to help, plus the offer of $5 extra an hour on top of his $15.50 hourly wage, prompted him to say yes. He says the only training he received was direction on how to wash his hands and put on his gloves.
I was not afraid to go into that room with no training-ish. You know, I knew I could handle it. I knew I could take care of these people.
He wore an N95 mask, gloves, and a gown when he entered their room.
You know, I helped bathe them and, you know, helped them go to the bathroom and fed them, and certainly helped them while they were in bed, you know, adjusting their bedding and, you know, transferring them in and out of, you know, the wheelchair, you know, as they went to the restroom. Or
He says he was told that another caregiver would be with the two elderly women, one of whom is on oxygen, when he wasn't there.
Only to find out that there wasn't somebody there, and they, you know, ended up on the floor. And, you know, if this was your mother, how would you feel if you saw something like that?
The 56-year-old P-Jack says after working 4 12-hour shifts caring for the women, he began to worry about his own health. He says he approached his managers at Oakmont with 2 requests. He wanted to be tested for the virus and be put on a 14-day quarantine without having to use his own sick time accrual. He says management refused both of his requests.
Instead, I was brought straight back into the community and told to go back to my regular shifts and my regular job, delivering food to people, bringing them mail, doing Zoom calls with family members.
P-Jack also accused Oakmont of not being transparent about how many staff and residents have been diagnosed with COVID-19. KPBS contacted Oakmont, which sent a statement through its public relations agency, The Press Shop, run by Nathan Ballard, a crisis communications strategist. The statement read in part, quote, "At our Oakmont of Pacific Beach community, we are caring for some COVID-19 positive residents. In the course of their duties, some of our staff do interact with those residents. In all of those interactions, CDC and State Department of Public Health guidelines for appropriate personal protective equipment use are followed," end quote. Ballard added that Oakmont is following CDC guidelines when it comes to testing. He also sent a link to those guidelines. However, he did not answer any questions relating specifically to P-Jack's allegations. The California Department of Social Services, which licenses assisted living residential communities, also declined to answer questions related to P-Jack's experience at Oakmont. Instead, a DSS spokesman sent several links on its rules governing staffing and caregiving. Dr. Carl Steinberg, a nursing home and hospice medical director in North County, says he's not surprised that P-Jack was returned to his regular duties without being tested for COVID-19 because of test kit shortages.
It's permissible, and it's far from ideal, and I think it does pose a significant risk to other residents. Because they are so vulnerable. If they do get it, they're going to be the ones that are likely to have respiratory failure or die from it.
He praised P-Jack for accepting the extra task of caregiving duties, but P-Jack says there may be fewer people ready to answer that call as the pandemic stretches on.
We've had a lot of caregivers just quit and give up or be afraid for their families and not wanting to bring it home, but still wanting to keep their job. We love these people. This is what we do.
Amitha Sharma, KPBS News.
The Hillcrest Farmers Market is returning this Sunday, but it will look a little different. It will be smaller with lots of safety protocols in place, but still plenty of fresh produce and prepackaged foods. There will also be a special shopping hour for senior customers only, and that's from 9 to 10 a.m. This comes as major summer events from Comic-Con to the fair are canceled. We talked to SDSU's Miro Kopik about the economic impact for the Friday Business Report.
Comic-Con over 4 days is $150 million. The fair, $250 million of economic impact. And even Pride, although economic impact is about $26, $27 million, it is the largest civic event we have in San Diego. 350,000 people were expected to go and be part of that. What does this mean? That means that just for those activities and events, over $625 million of lost economic impact to businesses in San Diego, the city of San Diego, and this can actually impact the sales tax that the city of San Diego collects by tens of millions of dollars of lost revenue. This is one of the major issues that the mayor announced the other day, that they're going to have to look at what kind of budget cuts are going to have to occur and what kind of services may need to be pulled back, because with all these impacts, those are big chunks of the budget that are lost.
KPBS is checking in on places beyond the San Diego metro area. Tonight, we have an update from Borrego Springs. This is usually a busy time for visitors, but COVID-19 has changed daily life in the desert community.
Hi, I'm Francoise Rose. I'm the Executive Director of the Borrego Springs Chamber of Commerce here in beautiful Borrego Springs. When we saw all this happening, I think it surprised a lot of the locals, because we assumed everybody else was going to be on lockdown, quarantine, staying home, trying to stay safe, but instead they were coming out to these outer areas. So we immediately had to start implementing stricter rules. We had our weekend of art that was canceled. We had the home tours that was canceled. Our farmers market, everyone loves our farmers market, that was canceled. And we ultimately had to close the statues as well. The Goleta Meadows statues, where people come from all over the world to see these. They're spread out all over the desert. But we were getting masses of people coming in just to see those while they were open. We can't wait for this to be over. We can't wait to have all our visitors back. We really, truly miss you all, but we have to stay safe here, just like you have to stay safe at your home. So we do appreciate the fact now that you aren't coming to Borrego Springs. And as soon as we can open our arms and welcome you, we will get the word out. And we truly thank everybody for respecting what we have here.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Stay safe and good night.